Hello, we are live. We are live on Instagram. No, not live on Instagram yet. We're live on YouTube. We are live on Facebook. We hope you're tuning in. We're attempting to go live, and I've lost it. Man,
Instagram's the stubborn one, it seems like.
Instagram, there's so many steps. So I think I'll just upload this later.
Okay.
So you will see it on Instagram, but not this at this moment. So when you see it, it will not be live, but that is okay. So we're here for part 3 of the Resurrection Eggs activity. We have had 2 weeks already of going through this activity, a way to show or illustrate the story of Easter, the story of Jesus' death and resurrection. I also want to mention Katie has started visiting our young parents groups. So maybe some of you who tune into this is going to reinforce what you've already learned. And for some of you, it's a preview, but we hope this is a resource for you, something that you could take away to understand for yourself or for your kids. So did I introduce us yet, Katie?
No, you didn't.
Okay. Well, my name is Laura Lee. I am the Young Parents Director, and Katie is as a Young Moms Mentor and a Faith 101 leader, meaning that her role is to help us understand faith, how it applies to our lives, how to understand these stories that we're talking about, and she loves to teach about it, mentor about it. So anyway, we're giving you the floor to take us to part 3 of this activity.
Yeah, so let's do a quick recap. I won't quiz you on it. I think
I'm so ready though.
No, are you? Okay. Well, I'll do it quickly. So we had our palm leaf for Palm Sunday. Yes. That was our first egg. That was your favorite one, I think.
It is still my favorite.
And then remember that one of Jesus' followers, Judas, agreed to turn him over to the religious leaders for 30 pieces of
Okay, well, I am not frozen, I don't think, but I think... Yes, you are.
Okay, that was so weird. I could still see you and everything was still working, but my own screen
that was just dark. A solid freezing. And I was like, okay.
And there's a little other picture of me and it was still working, so I'm not sure. But the Last Supper, I think, is where I got cut off. So we had the little bread, and I didn't have this last time, but these are my tiny little, isn't that adorable?
That is actually so cute.
It's so cute.
That's so cute.
But symbolizes something very meaningful and important, as Jesus shared the bread and the wine and told his disciples that this was his body and blood, and they didn't fully understand what was going on. And then he went into the garden, and I'm trying to get a focus on it.
You have to do that, like...
Oh, the Instagram makeup thing, or like...
Yeah, see, yeah.
Oh, it works, isn't it?
Now. They do it for a reason.
The praying hands. Jesus went and wept and prayed in the garden before he was taken away and had a few trials. This is our whip. He was whipped and beaten a few times. And then it is decided that he was going to be crucified, and Pilate turns him over to the soldiers, and they mock him, and they put the crown of thorns on his head. They put a robe on him and call him King of the Jews. So I know that last week, as we got into those last 3, it got a bit... It's heavy. It is a heavy thing. And I was thinking about that after that. I think it is important for us to be sort of grappling with all of those feelings. But then there is a balance when we bring it to our kids. Like, this is an activity for our kids, and there's a lot of darkness in it to have to talk through. So it depending on the age of the kid, they might have questions about it, or we can sort of navigate those with wisdom. But
that's a great point. I mean, even you and I getting very emotional last week when we were talking about it, it's meaningful to us because it's something that we believe in. But understandably, when you're teaching kids about something, you take a different emotional approach, maybe. I don't think you have to be wise. I think that's what you're saying about the age age level, what's age appropriate. What I
Mhm.
really think cool is even when you were showing, like, isn't that cute, the little glass? I can actually see a child like mimicking
Yeah.
taking the cup and eating the bread and even participating in play, um,
Yes. Yeah.
this dinner, this last supper that Jesus had. And so,
Yeah.
and the disciples, and I think that's what's really cool about these activities, is that they're engaging on
Yeah.
it. They're not just receiving it, but they're participating in it. So
Yeah. And I mean, my younger two are 8 and 11, and they were still really into this when I put it together. And especially my 8-year-old, he was like wanting to open them all and knew what they all were. And I didn't in that moment. He knows the story and had done these eggs. It's him who I got the idea from. Had in maybe 2 years ago with his class and his teacher. But he opened them and was like, oh, I wasn't sure, like with some of my weird creativity. And he's like, oh, that's a whip. Like he knew,
yes,
and he
he
knew the
knew. Okay,
story and
good.
knew what each one was. And there's, yeah, this sort of balance of they find it cute, like, oh, look at how cute that is, but then also knowing the story. So I think it,
Mhm.
yeah. Anyway, that aside, we can continue on. So we're still in sort of the heaviness of it. So our egg number 7, here we have, this is the crucial one, the cross that we all are
Oh
familiar
yeah,
with.
yes, yes,
I
yes.
should do my thing here so you
Yeah,
can see it.
yeah.
So Jesus is before Pilate, and Pilate agrees. The people have chanted, crucify him, crucify him. And we talked about this last week. These were possibly some of the same people who were waving the palm leaves, bringing him, celebrating him in as he came into Jerusalem. And so I'm reading, this time I chose to read from the Message, which is a version of like a translation kind of the Bible that speaks a little bit more the way that we do, and sort of a little bit more like you would be reading a more modern book. But I think sometimes it's helpful in ways like this to be talking about it. So I'm reading from John, and this is Pilate caved into their demand. So that's the demand of the crowds that they're shouting, crucify him, crucify him. He turned him, that's Jesus, over to be crucified. They took Jesus away. Carrying his cross, Jesus went out to a place called Skull Hill. The name in Hebrew is Golgotha, where they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on each side, Jesus in the middle. Pilate wrote a sign and had it placed on the cross. It read, Jesus the Nazarene, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read the sign because the place where Jesus was crucified was right next to the city. It was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek. The Jewish high priests objected. Don't write this, they said to Pilate. The King of the Jews, make it. This man said, I am the King of the Jews. But Pilate said, what I've written, I've written. This is in John's account, and I love this because we talked last week about some of like the irony of like things that are going on, and Pilate is in a way mocking Jesus, but he's in multiple languages declaring that Jesus is the King of the Jews, which is what he is. And I think that the religious leaders sort of recognize that. So they're like, don't say that, say he's claiming to be. But he's like, no, I've already done it. I've already declared this. So that's our cross. So Jesus has been crucified and has gone out, carried it out to Golgotha, where he will die. Egg number 8. So meanwhile, he has been stripped of his clothing, and the soldiers, when they crucified him, they took his clothes and they divided them amongst themselves. And he had a robe that would have been seamless and would have had some value to it. It was a single woven piece of fabric. And so they said to each other, let's not tear it up. Let's throw dice to see who gets it. So our egg number 8 is a dice. To symbolize that the soldiers sort of, played this game in order to get his clothing. But what's interesting about this is what they were doing was confirming scripture, which said, they divided up my clothes among them and threw dice for my coat. And so again, what the soldiers were doing was validating something that had been in scripture long before, that this would be something that happened. Jesus' clothes were then divided among the soldiers who had escorted him to Golgotha. So it would have been like his cloak and his head covering and things like that. And so they divided them as he goes off. Oh, my pages are not in order here. So hold on a second. But I know what it is. So I just have to find my scripture. Okay, so Jesus is crucified, and there he's before he has most of his followers have left. They're not there as he's dying, but before him would have likely been his mother and his aunt, Mary, the wife of Clopas, this was a follower of his, and Mary Magdalene are at the foot of the cross. And this again is from the Gospel of John. Jesus saw his mother and the disciple he loved, which was probably John himself, standing near. He said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that moment, the disciple accepted her as his own mother. So Jesus, as he's dying, is caring for the people that he loves the most. Here I go.
We can't do it without tears. Yeah. We cannot tell the Easter story without tears.
We can't. Jesus, seeing everything that had been completed so that the scripture might also be complete, said, "I am thirsty." A jug of sour wine was standing by. Someone put a sponge soaked in the wine on a javelin and lifted it to his mouth. After he took the wine, Jesus said, "It is done, complete." Bowing his head, he offered up his spirit. I'm just going to take a side here because I think this is one of those things that we get used to reading, but in it, I think Jesus is deciding his moment of death. He has given up his last breath, and it is still an element of him being in control of what's happening. Not many of us get to decide that, to say, okay, this is it right now.
Fair enough.
He is. He's making the decision to give up his spirit. Then the Jews, since it was the day of the Sabbath preparation, and so the bodies wouldn't stay on the crosses over the Sabbath, it was a high holy day that year, petitioned Pilate that their legs be broken to speed death and the bodies taken down. So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first man who was crucified with Jesus, and then the other. When they got to Jesus, they saw that he was already dead, and so they didn't break his legs. One of the soldiers stabbed him in the side with a spear, and water and blood gushed out. So our last one here, this is a spear.
Where did you find that?
Oh, Lego? Come on. You've got Lego in your life. Lego. Yeah. Lego.
I know where I would look for it, but I'm curious where you found it. But then I forgot you got Lego fanatics.
I've got Lego. Yeah. Yeah. So Jesus was already dead. So this wasn't contributing to his death in any way, was more confirming it. And so it's kind of an official, like, Jesus is dead at this point. So we can confirm that. And those are our 3 eggs. We're left.
Okay, we're stopping here, but it is part 3 of 4, and that's what's fascinating, because maybe some people think Easter is just about Jesus' death on the cross, and there's more to come.
Yeah,
this is in some ways the cliffhanger, even though we would consider death as the end of somebody.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's such a, like, it's a brutal story. It's a really brutal story. And I know you told it in such a way where it is PG, rated PG.
but even reading the scripture directly can be really, with when we have little kids, we have to navigate it a little bit.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, for somebody who's hearing this for the first time, how does that apply to us? Like, is this a historical story? Obviously it is on one hand. Yeah. How does it affect us presently? This is what I sit with. Why do we even choose to tell this story?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you want to take a stab.
Well, part of it, I think we wouldn't still be telling it if what's to come didn't happen. I think. I mean, maybe we would, but not in the same way. Because I think, the relevance is, and I think Jesus' disciples and followers were asking probably the same thing in the moment. Like, we've been following him, and now what? Why does this death matter? But I think when we look at the whole picture of what Jesus came and did and taught, and the way that he died, we start to see this whole upside down kingdom that he is presenting. One where you don't have to have power to be accepted. He gives up his power completely. And I think it's hard for us to think, like, why would he be willing to do that? And but when we think of him as being God, being the Son of God, to come to us and to go to the very lowest place. So he's brought to a a place of absolute shame. He's treated like the worst of the worst at the time, and he's willing to go to that place. So it's not, I'll die an honorable death for those of you who are honorable. He says, I will die the most shameful death, and enter into what the depths of all of the pain that you have entered into. I have entered into that with you and alongside you, and for you, really. Because so many of us will never experience the amount of shame and pain that he actually went through on our behalf. He went beyond. But for those who have experienced really shameful, painful, humiliating, he's dying as a criminal. So all of those things, he carries that burden on the cross with him, and through his trial, and as he's beaten and shamed and mocked, that's something that he enters into willingly on our behalf.
Yes. Yes. And I'm struck. There is a verse in the Bible that says, greater love has no one than this, than a person lay down their life for a friend. And this is the, I want to say, the theme of Scripture is God coming to us to show his love for us. It is essential. This activity, this Easter season, is central to everything else we talk about. And so God, in his love, and he's always giving it to us and then demonstrating it through this exceptionally generous gift of his own life for us. And I think this is the path of anyone who follows Christ, is that we enter into that generosity and give of ourselves and find great joy in it. That's a whole other topic. I mean, a whole other thing to explore. It's not another topic. It's very relevant to this, but I just, it's forever. Like, so as much as this is historical, it is relevant, and Jesus' love is accessible to us today because of what's coming.
Because of what's coming. Yeah.
Part 4. I mean, part 2 of this one, but part 4. And so please stay tuned. Katie, I don't know if you want to add anything, but I wanted to say, stay tuned. It's not the end of the story.
Yeah, it's not the end. Yeah. And the verse that you just quoted is from John, and it's something that Jesus said to his own friends, to his disciples, right before all of this happens. And then the Apostle Paul later on, I think, probably kind of reflecting on this in the book of Romans. So Jesus had said, there's no greater love than someone who would die for his friends. And then Paul says, but very rarely will anyone die for a righteous person. Maybe sometimes they'll die for someone who's good, but God demonstrates his love for us, that while we were still sinners, while we really are undeserving, Christ dies for us. So even though Jesus said, greater love is no one than this, to lay down one's life for its friends, there's sort of this like balance of him saying, or when I think about it, I think, but I'm not good enough to be his friend. So there's this double thing, as he welcomed me as his friend in doing this, and he calls me friend because I know he's done this for me. And then thinking about, I don't deserve it at the same time. So anyway, that's there.
Beautiful. And I'm wearing my grateful shirt for a reason. I think this is just how I feel about this story. I'm going to be wearing it in part 4 as well, because we're going to actually film it.
We are.
Record it, I guess the word is. But yeah, I feel very grateful for what Jesus did. Even though it was 2,000 years ago, it is as relevant today as it ever was. And I know I'll leave it for part 4. You're going to have to tune in. So anyway, would love to, as always, have conversations with you about this. Again, Katie's traveling to the different young parents groups. So if you're part of one, be sure to check that out and participate. Make your own resurrection Easter eggs, and it's a lot of fun. But you can reach out to us too, either by email, by leaving, where's the email? By leaving a message wherever this is playing. I'm treating this like it's a movie. Your local social media platform. Please DM us or PM us or whatever. We'd love to chat with you, but we'll talk to you next time, and thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye for now.